were the joint practices with the 49ers a success for the Raiders? I will let Mike go ahead and, take the forefront of this. I've got my thoughts, and, I'm just going to be boiling over here while Mike goes ahead and starts us.
You think you know why I'm smiling?
Because
my answer is yes.
I also agree, dude. All right. I really quick want to say, Raider fans and Raider players, why don't you pat yourselves on the fucking back? You guys really stepped up in these joint practices, and you guys went head to head with one of the best teams in the NFL, best rosters. And I'm gonna let Mike talk about what exactly happened and why it's a success for you guys.
Yeah. So I mean, I have a bunch of like tweets, or now they're called posts on X, whatever you want to call it, kind of all rounded up and culminated into a bunch of notes. And I'll try to, give credit to where credit's due as far as who tweeted it and all that. But first off, I just want to start the recurring theme through training camp that I have seen, and I'm a seasoned and hardened Raider fan. I never let this shit excite me. When, it's like, oh, this defensive back is just getting a bunch of interceptions. This linebacker keeps picking off quarterbacks, and it's like every year it's the same story of like, oh, the defense looks better, in training camp. And then, they're a bottom of the barrel defense every season. So I don't want to get too excited, but the recurring theme is that they are making stops. They are getting interceptions. They are making plays on the football. And I mean, that was through training camp. And, I've said it before. I don't go too crazy about practice throws. Like, I think some quarterbacks try to, squeak out some throws that they usually wouldn't throw in a real game. Right. But at the same time, when it's a recurring thing like this, you have to get excited, especially when you start seeing it against another team like the Niners. So I'll get more into that. So now I'm just going to read these. So first off, Jimmy G was doing pretty good against the Niners. He led a touchdown drive in the 2-minute drill towards the end of practice. He threw a 15-yard touchdown to Austin Hooper. Apparently there was defensive PI, but it didn't matter. Jimmy went 4 of 6 in the drill. And this is all against the first team defense for the Niners. This is per Levi Edwards and Vic Tafer on X. This is all from X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, right? Raiders first team defense got a stop in the final 2-minute drill session, ending practice for day 1 with a defensive stop. Meek Robertson with the PBU. That's per Deshaun Reed and Jesse Merrick. Devontae Adams doing Devontae Adams things. Day 1, caught a jump ball from Jimmy G over 2 defenders. Marcus Peters, apparently it was Marcus Peters. There was some tweets posted saying that it was Duke Shelley. Maybe they both had an interception at different times in practice. I'm not sure. I'm just going to go with Marcus Peters got the interception on Brock Purdy yesterday in the first team defense and offense matchup. I want to say that's 11 on 11s, and that's from Levi Damien.
Mm-hmm. The coverage has been so mixed, in terms of like who caught what interception, who threw what interception and what drill. So
yeah,
I heard the media was just like so far, so it was like really tough for them to cover it.
Yeah, there was a few, I think, essentially sarcastic pictures put out by certain people on X with like pictures of their binoculars and stuff because they literally needed them, So
honestly, they should get a fucking telescope with how far the Raiders had them.
Apparently, yeah, that's another topic.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see. Trey Lance led a nice drive to end practice on day 1. Final pass was dropped by Cam Latu. That was a tweet that I saw. I didn't get who that was from.
I also heard that too.
Yeah. Again, recurring theme from this training camp. It was a great day. This is all day 1. It was a great day for the Raiders defense. specifically in making plays on the football. Aiden O'Connell went 5 for 7 during an 11 on 11s per Levi Edwards. Max Crosby was the best player on the field. The Raiders won the day, says Hondo Carpenter. Marcus Epps and Amik Robertson had good days from Vic Tafer. Brian Hoyer threw a pick 6 to Taylor Hawkins. I'm not sure who that is, but maybe you would know.
He's a guy who I would probably assume is not going to make the team, but a pick 6. I mean, fuck, I'll take that.
Yeah, maybe he goes out in the preseason and he proves that he deserves to be on the team.
Mm-hmm. I think it's no disrespect to him. I just haven't heard the name before, and this is a stacked roster, so it's just incredibly difficult in order to find a spot.
It's tough to find a spot on a deep team like that. Maybe he earns himself, if not a roster spot, maybe a spot on the practice squad.
Yeah, but you know what? Maybe this team isn't as stacked as we thought because they got their fucking asses kicked today.
By the Raiders. Yeah, which, I mean, we say that as if it's negative, but honestly, every year it happens where, we're coming out of the preseason and it's like, oh, man, typical Raider fan, typical John Gruden voice. Oh, I'm telling you what, man, those Raiders, man, they're going to do something.
No, but I feel like this is a little bit different. You know what I mean? You guys have a new quarterback at the helm, and you guys are going against a legit defense. Like, obviously minus Bosa, but, like, all right, even if Bosa was there, obviously he's going to wreak a little bit more havoc, but I would say it sort of evens the playing field in terms of the type of defenses that you're going to see during the regular season. Because like I said before, I don't think that the Raiders' aspirations this year are necessarily to win the Super Bowl. This to me is like a playoff, make the playoffs or bust, sort of year for the Raiders. Or, in terms of tank for Caleb Williams, I just want to quickly backtrack. Every team wants to win the Super Bowl. But like I said, the goal, every team's goals have to be a little bit different. And you got to be progressing towards, you got to be progressing towards that.
Yeah, there's
doesn't
layers.
Happen overnight.
Yeah, there's layers to team building. And I think the Raiders brass knows that it's the beginning stages. I know we're getting a little off track, but I do want to talk about it since you mentioned it. I'm not expecting playoffs, but I also think that this team could shock people and possibly get that 7th seed. They're not winning the division. That's just not happening. There's no chance. I mean, that would take a lot of injuries to a couple of certain AFC West quarterbacks for us to win the division. But
I wouldn't just say that they could shock people. They've already shocked people. In Niner fans specifically, including myself. I would say I didn't think the Raiders really had it in them to play as well as they did. I mean, granted, it's practice, right? And then we'll see how it translates to the game on Sunday. But I mean, who really tries and wins a preseason game? You know what I mean? Yeah, the most important part is getting great reps at game speed for your guys.
Yeah, well, I think for the players, it is for the players to win the game, but on a personal level for them, I'm sure it's like, I got to put good tape out there because I'm fighting to make this team, So they're playing hard. That's why the backups are out there. They're going to play their asses off. The starters go out there. Why should they? If they trot Devontae Adams out there, I'd rather him jog on routes. I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to see him get hurt, which we'll talk about later,
Mm-hmm. I sent you an interesting tweet or X post, whatever you want to, X video. I sent you, a post earlier about Andy Reid on the Kansas City Chiefs. I think is planning to play the starters for a half. And, I remember telling you a couple years ago that I think it is sort of important to have your starters, play a little bit in the preseason. I mean, obviously you don't want them. I think a half might be a little bit too steep, but Andy Reid sure as hell knows more about, coaching men at the NFL level than I do. You know what I mean? He has won 2 Super Bowls in like the past 5 years.
I think Andy Reid knows how to coach more than almost anybody in the NFL. I mean, I could probably count less people than there are fingers on this hand, you know, as far as coaches that know more than Andy Reid. Like,
I would say the only argument that I would be willing to accept is probably Bill Belichick, but I feel like Belichick's sort of past his, heyday as a head coach. Belichick's been around the league forever.
Yeah.
But Andy Reid's got, I want to say he comes from the Bill Walsh coaching tree. So
yeah,
he knows the blueprint.
Yeah. As far as starting starters in the preseason, I agree with the principle of like putting them out there for a drive or two, just to give them game reps. But a whole half is ridiculous. Go ahead, Chiefs. Go right ahead.
Did they do that last year? All right.
Okay. I was going to say the Raiders.
It's ridiculous. You think it's ridiculous, but if they did that last year and they won the Super Bowl, it's not so ridiculous. They got off to that hot start, and at least if I'm remembering correctly, I could be misremembering. Maybe they started off like 0-1, 0-2, and then picked it up. But they were able to maintain that 1 seed, which is huge.
They're a great team, period. I don't know if the preseason really affects it. I think.
You think they would win either way?
I think they would win either way. I just, and they have so much experience in the system. Like, I don't know. That's just risky to me, And then, like, what's the point if the opposing team is like, well, we were only going to play our starters on defense for like 2 drives. So have fun tearing up our second team defense, you asshole. Our second team defense's morale is going to go way fucking down against Mahomes. Thanks.
Yeah, but then again, the offense is going to start clicking, and you're going to have a lot of practice against. I mean, it's going to be less of a competition than you would get in terms of like a first string defense, but still, you're running the offensive plays and you're getting back into the swing of football, and you're building that football callus and getting in football shape. I know I just said football.
Yeah.
But I'm just excited for it to be back. You know what I mean?
100%. And I can't wait.
And if Andy Reid thinks that it's smart to play your guys in the preseason, then I have no issue. I have no issue with it. I think that his intuition is as good as anybody's.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say on this topic is maybe the Chiefs, like you mentioned about the Niners, probably not keeping Taylor Hawkins. The Chiefs know that their team is deep, so we don't need that much time for our backups, perhaps. I don't know. But that's a whole other topic, and I think we're getting a little off track.
Though? Is there?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We got to carry on.
Yeah.
What I was going to say?
No. I'll talk about it later. Go for it.
Okay. Well, the Raiders, I know they played their starters last year. I forget how much they did in like games, like 2, 3, and 4, because they were in the Hall of Fame game. I know they started the starters in that. I think it was just for 2 drives though. Like, and people were shocked, like, oh, they never play the starters in the Hall of Fame game, and then the Raiders did, and they played like Josh Jacobs. But I don't know. I don't feel that strongly about preseason snaps for starters. Like, I wouldn't do it more than two drives. I remember back when they used to have. Yeah, back when they used to have 4 preseason games, I remember the 3rd preseason game, it was like you might see a team go out there for the whole first half. But this first game, the second game, didn't see that. And then the 4th game, the final game, was like no starters, all backups. We're trying to figure out who is going to make this team. And that makes sense to me. And also, again, why risk injury? So I don't know how they do it right now, because I know they recently made that change where they went from 4 games to 3. So maybe teams are still kind of trying to figure it out. Who knows? But that's that for preseason snaps. There was something else we were talking about. Not Andy Reid as a coach, but obviously
whether the joint practices were successful.
Yeah, I was going to finish up the notes on that. The last thing we were talking about, I think, was Brian Hoyer throwing the pick 6.
Oh, to
Hawkins.
Yeah.
I forget. I don't know if we were talking about.
Oh no, yeah. That was the last thing that we talked about, because I said, oh, this guy might not make the team, and then I said, I think I mentioned something about him having an opportunity to show something in the preseason game. Maybe this roster isn't as good. And then I asked you about the tweet.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that tweet was from Paul Gutierrez. I'll just kind of finish up day one and then go on to day two for the Raiders. There was a mini scuffle between Nate Hobbs and is it Juwan Jennings?
Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Jennings.
I love Jennings. He's a fighter, dude.
Yeah, well, so is Nate
He can
Hobbs.
Block. Yeah.
And that was also from Paul Gutierrez. The D-line had some players flashing out there. Chandler Jones had a day as far as in one-on-ones.
Was he going up mainly against Colton McKivitz?
I couldn't tell you. I know Crosby was going up against Trent Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if if they were all kind of intertwining and switching off.
I mean, they might have been switching around like the DNs with the tackles, and then probably having the interior D linemen go against the guards and the centers.
Yeah. Jerry Tillery had a nice day on day one, and then Vic
real quick
Tafer,
before you move on from that, in terms of one-on-one pass rush drills, just coming from a football background where I played offensive line, those drills favor the defensive player, because you're never going to get into a situation really where you're just absolutely one-on-one with a guy. There's always going to be guys around, and so I do think that we should keep an eye on McKivitz on the Niner side, but those drills favor, like I said, favor defensive players.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see how it goes down, but I mean, usually the way it's going to go is a little bit back and forth. Like apparently it went for Crosby and Trent Williams, where Crosby would win a couple and Williams would shut him down for a couple.
Yeah, I mean, Williams would do that to Bosa too, and you have to keep in mind Williams is probably one of the best tackles maybe of all time.
Yeah,
he is kind of old, but
he's still in his prime.
Yeah,
he is still the best tackle in football by far.
Mm-hmm.
So Tillery had a nice day. This is all from Vic Tafer, and then Byron Young, the 3rd round pick for the Raiders, had a nice shed and chase. Vic Tafer says, but the thing I take away from that is that Byron Young was practicing. He's been out on the I don't know. I forget if it was the PUP or the non-football injury list, but regardless, he's been out all of training camp until yesterday. So it's nice to see that he's back. Also, before the joint practices with the Niners, Neil Farrell Jr. came back as well. So finally, the Raiders' defensive line seems to be at full health as far as rookie 3rd round pick this year, Byron Young, Neil Farrell, 4th round pick from last season, or 5th round pick. I'm not sure, but so that's nice. And then last one for day one is the Niners D-line got the best of the Raiders offensive line in one-on-ones, but Colton Miller, Andre James, and undrafted rookie McClendon Curtis held up well, according to Sean Reed. So, and then I can just roll right into day two unless you have something.
No, you just keep chugging along.
Okay. Day two. Duke Shelley had an end zone interception on Trey Lance from Paul Gutierrez. I want to say this was on 7-on-7s.
Mm-hmm.
In 7-on-7s, the Raiders defense had 4 interceptions. Marcus Epps, Robert Spillane, Luke Masterson, Duke Shelley all had interceptions. This is per Levi Edwards. First play, I want to say this one is 11 on 11s. First play with the Niners back on offense, Marcus Peters gets an interception. And then as far as Raiders offense goes, Jimmy G threw a 10-yard touchdown to Jacoby Myers, followed by an outside cross touchdown to DeAndre Carter. I want to say that's 7-on-7s. This is per Levi Damien. And then, according to Sean Reed, he says, according to our unofficial media account, the Raiders defense had 6 interceptions across 7s and 11s drills today. Robert Spillane, the starting middle linebacker for this Raiders team, had 2. Luke Masterson had 1. Duke Shelley, Marcus Epps, and Marcus Peters as well also had 1 each. And that's the last of my big notes for day 2, other than something that we'll get to later.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, as far as the question at hand, if the Raiders were if these joint practices with the Niners were successful for the Raiders,
hell yes, it was.
Yeah,
hell
I mean,
yeah.
As far as product on the field, yes, absolutely. Which is not what I was expecting. I was expecting to come in here, with my head a little down, like, well, Jimmy G got picked off 3 times. I don't know if he got interception. I do remember seeing a tweet that he had an interception dropped. Like, it should have been picked, but it got dropped. I want to say that's the only thing I saw in both days.
Not only that, but Garoppolo was driving down the field, and I heard that the Raiders had no issue driving on the 49ers defense. And it's a little bit alarming for the Niners defense because not only earlier in training camp were the Niners offense able to, just completely go down the field on them, but the Raiders without Josh Jacobs, the Raiders without, Darren Waller's gone, and Jimmy Garoppolo's been throwing picks in practice, but you can't pick him off. Like, you guys have picked him off nonstop in training camp for years.
Mm.
But you can't
maybe Jimmy G had a little chip on his shoulder,
Yeah. I love pissed off Jimmy. When the Niners drafted Lance, Jimmy came out to training camp and he was like, it was like a new energy under him. And I kind of like teased around the idea. I'm like, what if the Niners spent 3 first-round picks just to light a fire under Jimmy G's ass and piss him off? But yeah, apparently their intention was slightly different. They spent 3 first-round picks to piss me off. Yes. But in terms of the question, Raiders, like I said earlier, you should feel proud. Yeah, I really don't have much else to say about that.
Yeah, I don't have much else to say either.
It was a huge success. You went against one of the best defenses in the league. You didn't fall flat on your face. You got good reps.